Hey folks, this is Clayton Collins, your host for the Housing News podcast. And one of the best parts about podcasts is you get a little glimpse into the real life and real personality of the guests of each episode and the host. And what you're getting from me this week is week 3 of pretty terrible seasonal allergies here in Dallas. I joked about it last week, but they continue to drive me crazy. So please excuse me if I'm a little off my game today. But it's hard to be off your game when you have a guest that is as smart, as lively and entertaining as today's guest, Leigh Brown. Leigh is the broker owner of Community One Real Estate in Charlotte, North Carolina, an independent brokerage which she started about 3 years ago. But she's been in the real estate industry for about 23 years, and anyone who is involved in the National Association of Realtors or the North Carolina Association of Realtors or listens to podcasts is probably pretty familiar with Leigh. Leigh is also the host of Crazy Shit in Real Estate, where she has some of the most entertaining guests in real estate come on and share stories and expertise. It is a fun listen, and we really recommend that you check it out. But in today's episode of Housing News, we focus in on some of the expertise that Leigh has built up through her 23 years as a real estate broker and agent, stuff she's learned from the Crazy Shit in Real Estate podcast, and some of her learnings as being involved in the National Association of Realtors and other trade orgs and events across the industry. This is a information-packed episode with Leigh Brown, and she delivers information in a very entertaining and informative way. That is why we're bringing her to the stage this summer at the Gathering of Eagles, our Real Trends event focused on the things that are happening in the real estate brokerage market and how folks are building really impressive businesses by thinking of their businesses like entrepreneurs instead of just an agent or a broker. It's a really cool group and a really incredible conference, and we're excited to have Leigh on stage. But today, I really hope you enjoyed this episode with Leigh Brown. Yeah. Don't get mad about the rules. Just know what game you're playing and understand the rules and how to navigate them. I mean, that's the ethos that I operate under. And we've been covering that story at HousingWire for months now. But finally, once the consumer starts paying attention, we get the LOs and agents finally digging in. But that's another story, Leigh. So the real estate industry changed a lot in your 23 years of selling houses and leading a brokerage. One of those trends and that you're going to be joining us on stage this summer at the Gathering of Eagles to talk about is the shifting business models of teams and teamerages and how that's impacting the brokerage ecosystem. You want to give us a little preview of what the shift you're seeing today and how teams are operating inside of the brokerage ecosystem?
Well, it was funny. I had the chance to listen to Steve Murray present at an event last week. And as you know, he is the king of having his finger on the pulse of the data in the business. And I'm glad he's retiring some to spend time with the family, but daggone, somebody's going to have to fill that gap.
He's a senior advisor to me. He's senior. We've got him.
You've got him, but let's be honest. He's loosening the reins a little bit. And I just want to clutch back at the reins myself. But that's me not liking change very much. I'll just be honest. But he made this really great point that in the last set of numbers for the Real Trends 500, you saw an increase of market share for that 500 that he's never seen before. And all that demonstrates is that there is definitely a consolidation of power amongst the teams and the teamerages out there. And it's an easy thing to see why. When you look at the last 3 years, and I just call the last 3 years the COVID era, the consumer had no idea what to do. And when they don't know what to do, they call the person they deem to be the most reputable and experienced in the marketplace. And if you're an early career person, I am not denigrating you, but you have to understand, my phone was going to ring more than yours because I am long in the tooth. And a lot of people would be like, you know what, I'm just going to call Leigh Brown on this because I don't have the faintest idea what's going on. Well, the Leigh Browns of the world can't take all the phone calls we get. And so the teams that are wise have added people or just strengthened who they have, and the business migrated to them. And so it's one of those things that realtors really love to think they can spend their way to bigger market share, but you don't necessarily spend your way to bigger market share. You survive your way to more market share is the daggum truth of it. But it's also continually building that micro market expertise. And when we look at how teams are evolving, I think you're seeing more of the team leaders become the wise sage of the team, and they are pouring into the agents around them. And the agents aren't leaving because where else can you replace that access to somebody with experience and knowledge? And it's just continuing to consolidate there. Now, one thing that I watch as a independent boutique, I'm a tiny office, and it's on purpose that my office is my team and currently another team, and that's it. And we're thoughtful about who comes in here because we have, I mean, a tiny little tight knit culture, and it works for us. And that's not for everybody, which is the thing I love about real estate. There's a business model for anybody. But when you look at where the future is going, that early career person comes to me because they can see how much bigger real estate is, I think, than we saw 23 years ago. When I came in learning from my dad, it was, more signs in yards and more ways to hit buyers. And then with the advent of the internet and social media, we hear about things like FHFA fee changes, and you start learning about FEMA's going to move flood zones around. There's a new flood cert, and now we got to talk about this and talk about that. And the new agents, I think, see more quickly how broad the industry is, and they migrate to somebody that will pour into them. And a team leader is going to do that. But I was going to mention that the frustration I have is that so many of these mega teams don't do what I did and open their own shop. They hide. They land under another broker. And some of us would say they're hiding, but they think that they're mitigating their own liability by hanging with somebody else. And there's going to have to be a discussion at some point about the liability of supervising people that you don't know by heart. And I know that our state's discussing it, a couple of other states have as well. Should there be a maximum number of agents under supervision? If those rules start to promulgate in our regulatory bodies, that's going to change the team structure. So maybe a team will split and become 2 or 3 teams, or there'll be a managing broker inside the team. There's a lot of suggestions that are being bounced around as we figure out what is the best thing for consumer protection that brings the highest level of expertise to the consumer, because a market like this, it's not a market where you want an app representing you. And I think the public knows that when you look at how the numbers are going up for people choosing an agent versus going it on their own, which is why I really wish the people that are involved in the lawsuits at the Department of Justice would come get their license and get out in the field for a minute. They would then see how competitive real estate is, and they would understand why the consumer doesn't just buy a house online like they buy that pair of socks I talked about earlier.
We have a Slack channel at HW that publishes all of the new registered users for our HW events, like the Gathering of Eagles coming up in June and HousingWire Annual coming up in October. I was just scrolling through the Gathering of Eagles feed on Slack, and wow, I am blown away with the quality of the attendees. Leaders from Keller Williams, Better Homes and Gardens, EXP, Compass, Hannah Holdings, RE/MAX and Home Services, and incredible ecosystem partners like Zillow, Austin Board of Realtors, New Western Acquisitions, UWM, and Bright MLS, just to name a few. If you aren't familiar with GOE, this is our real estate brokerage event for the most elite brokers, teams, MLS execs, and state and local association of realtors leaders. June 18th through 21st in Austin, Texas at the amazing Omni Barton Creek Resort. Visit the events tab on realtrends.com or housingwire.com to register. So Leigh, you started and built your career as a leader inside of a large national franchise. How did you decide to make the jump to become an independent broker instead of launching a team or staying inside of a franchise or large brand? And I'll kind of back that up with some of the Real Trends research has shown that the economics of running a team are pretty damn good. So how did you think about that decision and kind of weigh the pros and cons of your decision to launch Community One?
Well, I loved the brand I was with before. I still say that were I with a brand, it would still be that one. I have a high level of respect for my colleagues at that brand. I just decided to leave right when COVID started because apparently I knew in my gut that we would have a period of non-essential service in North Carolina where I would have a chance to get my shit together. But, hey, I really can't take all that credit. But at the time that I broke off, it was primarily because I was paying out to a brand that, this is going to sound really arrogant and I can't help it. My brand as a speaker, trainer, talking head about real estate is its own thing. And it was perceived as competing with that brand. And so that brand did not support my growth. And I get that. I am a unique bird when it comes to this stuff because I do the research. And like Steve, I'm a big wonky nerd looking at the data, looking at everything. And I talk about it after I read it. And they didn't. And so there was on the top level, on the corporate level, it just wasn't a fit anymore. And again, I love the brand and the people, but it just wasn't a fit. And that's not a slam. It's just you go through phases in life, right? And so I decided I would just be independent and start my own little boutique. And of course, there's always a fear when you do that you're going to lose business and people will judge. And frankly, I'm just about past caring what other people think at this point in life. And as it turns out, my clients, because I reached out to all of them, that's one of the keys of growth in your business is talking to people you've done business with. And to a man, they said, you should have done this years ago. And I was like, for real? I'm like, oh, never occurred to me because I had that inertia that any successful agent has of it's working. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, which is hilarious that real estate is a world of renegade entrepreneurs who do the same thing all the time and get trapped by their own inertia. But I digress. It was a great move, and who knows where I'll be this time next year. Do I franchise this and let other people do the one community in Saginaw, Michigan, or do I just stay tiny here at home? I don't know. I'll know when the Lord tells me, and he hasn't made that clear yet.
That's a really cool story. And I love seeing you go independent as an entrepreneur. The entrepreneurial process and step gets me really excited. It is interesting though how you think of like all real estate agents, professionals as this entrepreneurial bunch. Do you think agents like know the entrepreneurial community and demands of being an agent and a broker, like how entrepreneurial it is when they start? Is that something that attracts them, or is something they just kind of figure out as time goes on that this is a scrappy, sales intensive, independent entrepreneurial ecosystem?
We should just say that some figure it out and some never do, because it's wild to me that these agents out here can be amazingly successful in their relationships and they can close a deal and they get to the end of the year and they can't figure out why their P&L doesn't show a whole lot of P because they're not thinking of themselves as CEOs. And I think if it were just more clear and that mindset that no matter whether you're with a giant national firm or a tiny boutique or you're a one-man band on your own, you're a little tiny CEO doing something unique. And that's one of the best things about real estate is you do get to create your own benefits and values and features, and you get to serve the little tiny corner of the world where you are. You probably know one zip code really, really well. And then agents forget to tell that story. But then they also get into this space of, well, I've sold a bunch. I must need to open my own office. And they don't realize that opening the office means you're now going to have to deal with HR and escrow accounts. And you're going to have to deal with the real estate commission and with being a supervising broker. And you're going to have a copier and coffee and toilet paper. And you're going to have to figure all of these things out. Oh, and if you're still buying and selling with clients, now you got to manage that as well. So I think if you look at the team situation as well, your team leaders are probably the ones in the business who get this at the highest level because they're building out a brokerage inside a brokerage, most of them, because they do have professional staff and they're dealing with payroll companies and they're figuring out how to hire and fire. They're building systems for their agents to follow so they can build some consistency in dealing with the consumer public. They've really got a handle on it. And the wise ones do watch that P&L all the time, and they're trying to drive dollars through, whether it's, for profit sharing or just because they want to go buy more investment properties. And I wish more agents would think about themselves in a higher regard, frankly. I mean, I think realtors are their own worst enemy when it comes to the perception of realtors, because you seldom hear a realtor say, well, yes, I'm a realtor, and put on their superhero stature. And they really are the superhero to that consumer because the consumer had no idea what to do next. And suddenly the realtor said, let's do X, Y, and Z, boom. But the same realtor who can confidently give advice to a buyer or seller turns around in the brokerage and gets a little lost. So it's interesting to watch. And when you see an agent figure it out, they suddenly look at their business in a different way. And the ironic part of it is they go from offering a really good experience to offering a different and more excellent experience because now they're seeing that big picture. And frankly, that's when we hope to get them involved in the volunteer side of the business, because we need more agents who can see that big picture and understand the intricacies of brokerage to be leading through the trade association, so that we can make sure we're thinking about the brokerage of the future and the team of the future and the agent of the future, and how do we serve them, because without those people, the consumer is going to get lost. Frankly, I worry that the future of the American dream is at stake because so many agents don't see their own value. And I can tell you right now, I could list off the people who, when we went to closing, they said, well, thank heavens, couldn't have gotten here without you, because it's just so time consuming and so big. And every agent has that list, but they forget to look back at it and remember what they're bringing to
and
the
articulating
table.
the value prop. I just recently had to talk a friend off the cliff of trying to buy and sell without an agent, and their understanding of the value prop was completely misaligned. I don't know if I fully got through to them, but hopefully they don't listen to this podcast. But the value prop.
If they decided to go off on their own, though, Clayton, they're going to figure out really quickly what they're not saving, and they're going to figure out really quickly what they could have gained by having a competent professional by their side. And I wish we had a data point on it. We should say, I know Steve's going to listen to this. I wish we knew, Steve, how many people, after completing a for sale by owner or a for purchase by self transaction, how many of them would confidently say, not in the slightest chance would I ever do that again? I'd love to know that data point.
That's a great study. We'll get. I'll make sure Steve and Tracy hear that one, and maybe we can bring that up at gathering this. Yeah, that'd be a good gathering of Eagles topic too. So for your session this summer, we need to. I'm going to urge you to talk about the future of the brokerage business model. I know we're talking about teams and teamerages, but the future of where that's headed is going to be an equally important conversation. And I guess I'm pretty fortunate with Real Trends and the HousingWire audience and the Altos research audience that we talk to the agents who understand like that this is a business and they're building a business, and like the folks on the rankings are the ones who've kind of like figured out the entrepreneurial side of understanding their P&L and doing some competitive recruiting and M&A. It's a entrepreneurial and sophisticated bunch that we cover through Real Trends, and so we'll get the chance to see.
Can I just say, speaking of entrepreneurs, what a smart move you guys made picking up Altos from Mike. I mean, I've been using Altos.
Picking up Altos with Mike. Mike is a big part of our story still. We're thrilled to have him on as the president of Altos here inside of HW.
A lot more vacation pictures now. He's working remotely. But, I've been a fan of Altos since Mike rolled it out, because I'm pretty sure I met him, this will date me, on Active Rain, when we all got Active Rain started back in 2006.
Yeah.
I was in that early group when there were not even just a couple thousand of us on the platform before it went big. That's where I found out about Altos, and I've been a subscriber ever since then, which means I probably paid for those vacations that Mike's taken. But I loved seeing that sharing of data to bring in a more cohesive picture, and I think that's going to give us more good information from y'all in the future. So high five, that was a good call.
I appreciate it, Leigh.
You take all the credit.
We're thrilled to have you as a client, and next time Mike is out skiing in Tahoe, I'll remind him that you're part of his success story.
He remembers. I tweet him back every time he posts some little skiing picture.
All right, Leigh, I will see you in less than 2 months in Austin, Texas. Thrilled to have you at the Gathering of Eagles this year, and excited to talk about the future of real estate brokerages and see some of this incredible knowledge that you've built up in the Charlotte market get spread across the country.
Well, I'm always glad to help and participate, and I look forward to seeing you and hearing some more data that I can put into my presentations.
Boom. We'll share some crazy shit on stage. Have a good one.
Thanks.